Before I begin, I would just like to quickly preface this video by saying that I understand a lot of people may, not enjoy my content as much anymore, or don't like the kind of angle I've had recently and stuff, just because of like my views of the game and how I've kind of been talking about it, and that's completely understandable. But I would just like to highlight and make it very abundantly clear that generally, if someone criticizes a video game, or in this case, a card game, they're criticizing it not because they just, are miserable people that don't have anything better to do with their time. People generally criticize like card games and video games and mechanics and all that stuff, not because they generally hate the game or whatever it is as a concept. It comes from a position of love. Like, I love this game. I've had so much fun with it throughout the years. And because of that love, because of how much I want the game to be fun, because of that desire to enjoy the game as much as I once did, that's what fuels the criticism, because I know how much better it can be and I know how much more fun it can be. And because I want it to be fun, I criticize it, and I say to myself, okay, well, if these problems didn't exist, then the game would be fun, or if these things didn't happen, then I would really enjoy the game. So I just wanted to make it very clear that I think it's very easy to pass off a lot of my videos and be like, oh, he's whining again. Like, why don't you just fucking quit and get on with it? Like, you've been talking about it for so long, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, right? And like I said, it's not because I hate the game itself. It's just, it's quite the opposite. I really like the game and I want it to be amazing. That's why I criticize it a lot, because I know it has that potential. So with that sort of disclaimer and preface out of the way, the recent kind of tournament results and stuff for this format. Now, I understand there's been a ban list and things are going to be very different next fall. And on paper, I think hypothetically we could be in for a very, very fun format for November, but we'll wait and see. This topic about spirals that I have today, you don't need to necessarily look at it as like a future tense, because yeah, it's not dead, but it's been severely crippled now. So it's not like, we shouldn't fixate on it too much. It's been a bit of a miserable like couple weeks, but Konami addressed the problems. And that's cool, that's great. Yeah, I guess that's really all I have to kind of say about that kind of disclaimer part. So I've divided, first of all, I've titled the video, Spiral Epitomizes Everything Bad About Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's like some kind of mechanics and, categories of things that I feel like if they didn't exist would make the game a lot more fun. But I think over the years, and as the power creep has increased and as the game mechanics have changed, all together, if we bring everything in one, Spiral embodies that. Spiral embodies all of the bad things that I personally don't agree with and I just don't like about the game. And I'd like to go through them one at a time. So let's just start with from the beginning here. And again, I just want you to understand that this video is about Spiral specifically because of the fact that it embodies all of these problems, but all of the examples I'm going to mention now, you're able to apply them to multiple decks that we've had in recent times. Okay, now let's begin finally. So the first point is going first. Spirals and many of problematic decks in general favor going first, but going first that doesn't mean the deck is unhealthy for the game if you want to go first. It's when there is a complete and total fixation on going first, and when going first puts you in such a huge position of advantage. There have been formats in recent years where going second is more viable. Going second, like Necro's Mirror, for example, you absolutely do want to go second. There's the Shaddolls, for example, in recent years. These are really good examples of decks that wanted to go second, and that's cool that we've had that. But in recent times, we have seen, because of the power of the deck, because of just the power of like some of the traps we've had, or some of the boss monsters they've put in the game, or just some of the big boards the decks can make, you want to go first to establish this your win condition. And I feel like going first is too strong for a lot of decks. I feel like this format, the coming November format, might alleviate this a little bit, but Spiral is a very good example of a deck where too much rides on going first. there is so much like emphasis on the first turn, and there is so much benefit to the first turn that it just creates a really unhealthy game. And if you don't want to go first, because a lot of people did blind setting with Spiral, what ends up happening there is that you play a fuck ton of hand traps. And I don't think hand traps are bad for the game by any stretch of the imagination, but when you're playing like 9, what is going on there? Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of problematic. I don't feel like you should be, playing that many hand traps to blind set, because that implies that deck is doing too much. That goes on to my second point here. Multiple steps. I feel like over time there's too much going on in one turn. Too much happens in one turn. Previously, now I've played quite a decent amount of plant synchro format, just really randomly. My friend has 2 legacy plant synchro format decks. We played some mirror match and stuff. More than Go or anything, that has definitely been one of my most fun formats, because it does have that essence of power behind it when you can make things like 2 synchro monsters in a turn, very good powerful synchro monsters like Stardust and something else, whatever, I don't know. It has that element of power to it, but in order to do those steps, you're not doing like 30 steps in a turn or something. If you actually count the number of plays a deck does in recent years, if you just act like numerically in your head, count, search this card, activate this card, search this card, activate this card, summon this card, search this card, add this card, normal this card, special this card, special that card, count all of that together, you'll end up in like 30, 40, sometimes 50 steps of activating effects, of searching, of summoning, of specialing, of overlaying, of blah blah blah, right? Literally up to 50 in a single turn. So that's one of the issues. Obviously that's Spiral embodies. If you actually just let a Spiral player do their first turn combo without any sort of disruption, the amount of steps in that one single main phase is absurd. There's too much happens in one turn. Like, a deck shouldn't do that much. Like, no, I'm not saying we need to go to normal summon set to pass, because I understand the game has evolved from there, but I feel like something like what plants did, it's a pretty like kind of like fair like compromise. Like the idea that you can special summon like 3 times, 4 times, but you're not going to OTK most of the time. Your best you're going to do is like clear their board. You're probably going to get disrupted with a trap. There's that element of back and forth, which goes on to my third point. Spiral embodied the idea of no mid game. Generally, you lose on your first turn. If your first turn board gets broken, you either lose on your first turn or you're able to make that comeback play and win on your second. But generally, the turn count total of the duels in recent years have never gone into double digits. If you're on turn 9 of a Spiral mirror match, that's a long time. That is a very long time. It's long as in actual physical temporal time, because the amount of steps in a duel is insane these days, that you're doing so much in a turn and so much is happening that you actually like you can say a duel has like 3 turns, but that might actually be like 50 minutes, because so much happens in that small amount of turns, if you understand what I'm saying. So it would be nice to see something like turn 10 again. It would be nice to see maybe even like turn 15, but then again, I don't want these to be like hour-long duels, because at least as I remember, playing something like in Hat format where turn 10 was fairly common, going back and forth with multiple soul charts from both players, that kind of stuff. That was really fun. I enjoyed that. There was mid game, there was grind game, there was resource management. But now, just watching the duel on screen, for example, it is just go all in constantly. Just do as much as you can and hope it sticks. And of course, I understand there's a degree of playing around things and order of operations depending on what hand trap they might have, and etc, etc. But a lot of what happens nowadays is kind of just, let me just put like you literally just try to do as much as you can, and just hope it doesn't get stopped, and you establish a big board, and yeah, you understand what I'm saying. So that's another problem. The next point I wanted to mention, 2, 3, 4 we're on, there is a really big sort of, and again, Spiral is a deck that completely embodies this, and it is the unaffected, cannot be destroyed by, or whatever, cards. Okay, now Last Resort, comboed with Sleeper, it just creates this sort of, that in itself isn't problematic because, obviously we have kaijus and stuff, but when you put all of this together, it becomes problematic. Now, in isolation, in a vacuum, unaffected by, cannot be destroyed by is probably not even that strong because of the fact we have kaijus these days. But if you couple this with everything together, like the Unbreakable boards, like the constant special summoning, like the fixation on going for it, if you bring all of this together, on top of that, throw in a Sleeper with Last Resort, it's just, it's far too much to deal with. It's far too, your deck building becomes a mess because, I need to out this, towers, but I can't really play kaijus because they're useless, because if I kaiju the Sleeper, well, they still have, 2 link monsters and a trap. That doesn't deal with the problem. There's too much to deal with, kind of thing. Now, in general, I've never liked the idea of unaffected by and cannot be destroyed, but I feel like that is a clause that needs to leave the game. Can't be targeted, can't be destroyed, unaffected. These, it produces really ignorant strategies, and it just kind of degenerates the game. And I've just never been. You might disagree, maybe as a sort of, not maybe in, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe sometimes that's okay, but not all the time. Sometimes, but not all the time. But literally, sometimes that is okay. In cases where, maybe True Draco, I don't think Masterpiece is a particularly healthy card for the game, but I understand that the deck strategy is to make a powerful monster, so kaijus are very effective there. But if you were to imagine Masterpiece on the field with a firewall and a trap, that's problematic. That's too much, because there's too many problems that you have to deal with. I think in general, I would like unaffected, cannot be destroyed by, cannot be targeted, etc., to be removed from the game. But I can understand if it's okay if that's if that's your deck's strategy. But Spyrals have that as their strategy, which they kind of just throw onto the end. Here's double firewall, here's handy wire, or here's just a big board, and let me just throw a Sleeper onto the field as well, because you basically summon it for free after you've done all your combos, since your graveyard is so full. You're basically summoning it for free. So I think if you bring all of that together, it's just too much. And this kind of ties into my fifth point, I guess. Unbreakable boards. It's too much. Spiral embodies that idea. Just go first, do as much as you can, hope it sticks, throw it all out there, and try win. Hope they have less hand traps than you have responses, kind of thing. I really don't enjoy that style of play. Next point, hand traps. I did kind of talk about it a little bit. Basically just kind of what I said before. There's if your deck needs to run double digits of hand traps, I feel like that goes back to the first point about this. There's too much of a fixation of going first. There's too much power to be gained by going first, that it's a domino knock-on effect. Well, decks are doing so much going first. Now I have to play all these non-combo cards, non-engine cards, not because I need a couple of defensive cards in my deck, but because my strategy is now I need to go second and open one of these, preferably 2 of these cards that interrupt their play, just so I can leave them on no resources and hopefully brick them by interrupting them, and then go second and then do the exact same that they tried to do the exact same thing that they tried to do to me. You know what I mean? And the final point, a lot of people would disagree with this, but I think that the fact that there's no more traps in the game, and this is going to sound weird, I don't consider Evenly Matched to be a trap of sorts. I feel like the way it interacts and the way you use it, you don't use it like a trap. I think playing a one-off trap that's searchable, something like Handywire, I feel like that doesn't really count because it's not part of your defensive ratio lineup. It's kind of there as your engine. It doesn't contribute much to anything that your engine does, and it doesn't contribute to your combo, but it's there as part of your, you have access to it because if you just open well enough, you can spare a search for a trap. It's not like before where you kind of you think okay, I'll go for 8 normal summons, 10 defensive cards, 10 extenders, like that kind of, like, you don't plan your deck out in that sort of ratio anymore. You kind of, like, your defensive card is, like, I feel like the best way to describe the game is offense is the best defense. I don't know if you guys have heard that say, it's something like that. It's like attack is the best defense or something, right? That's kind of the way decks have become functioning. It's like you do so much, you try be as powerful as you can, you try your best to do so much, and by doing so much, by overwhelming your opponent so much, by just having no defense, by constantly attacking, you know, in something like football, if you get rid of your defenders and play, like, you know, seven midfielders and like 4 strikers, you know, like, we'll just win that way because we'll just constantly be shooting at goal. Eventually we'll score so many goals that we don't even need a defense. Obviously that doesn't work in practice, but in Yu-Gi-Oh, that kind of feels like the tactic that we have to use with these decks nowadays. Let's just try do so much, let's just try overwhelm our opponents so much that we don't need to run defensive cards in the first place. And I think that's problematic. I think it's very problematic that cards like Bottomless Trap Hole aren't good anymore. I think, you know, conceptually, if I Bottomless Trap Hole one of your monsters, I think that should be pretty game breaking. I think that should be, you know, really, really powerful. I think if I Torrential you for 3, that should be game almost, right? But it's not. Like, the decks just, they can recover so much, they can float, they can, when destroyed, you can do this. Like, there's too many things happening. Like, it kind of goes back to the thing where I said about there's just multiple steps happening. Special summons are not special. They should rename it to common summon, or just fucking everyday summon, because that's what happens. It's just constant. Like, it's not unique. It's not special. Special summoning was genuinely special. It was a momentous occasion when you special summoned. It's just not how it works anymore. So yeah, these have been my sort of 7 kind of main points. Going first, the first turn fixation, number 1, and number 2 we have the multiple steps. Special summoning isn't special. 3, the lack of mid game. 4, towers like monsters unaffected by cannot be destroyed, cannot be targeted. Number 5, unbreakable boards. Number 6, the overabundance of hand traps, and number 7, the lack of actual defensive traps. Yeah, I suppose, like, defensive traps, hand trap, they kind of tie in together to an extent, but I would prefer purple cards were the trap cards, because that means that, you know, like, what's, like, if you're starting to play so many hand traps, what does that mean? It's not that those hand, like, I don't think it's problematic that we're playing defensive cards that can be activated from the hand. I think what's problematic is the reason why we have to play hand traps. Why do you need to play hand traps? It's because the decks are doing so much on turn 1. That's the root of the problem. The symptom is hand traps, but the actual root cause of that problem is the fixation on first turns, and because so much is being done on the turn 1. I hope that kind of explains my point of view. So thanks everyone for watching. If you've watched this far, give me hashtag bring back special summoning. Hashtag bring back special summoning if you've listened this far. Let me know what you think. And again, you know, I just want to reiterate, I am not complaining for the sake of complaining and because I'm a cynical, miserable bastard. I'm complaining because I really like this game and I want it to be the best it can. And I personally, in my opinion, in my humble, irrelevant opinion, from a guy who just happens to have a microphone and a decent enough amount of people who care about what he says through that microphone, in that worthless opinion, I just quit the match because he opened it. Look at that. Look at this. Look at this. What the fuck? Dupe, quick fix, his opponent scoops. Like, how is that fair? Your opponent flashes 2 cards and they scoop. This is the top rated duel on dueling book right now. Like, the irony that I make this video and then this happens. This is unbelievable timing. This guy goes, quick fix, machine dupe, pass turn. Sorry, doesn't pass, his opponent scoops. Is that really the kind of format that we want to play in? Is that really the type of decks we want to see running around today? I really don't think that's what we should be seeing today. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you next time.